Hello, and welcome to our latest Lunch and Learn, which is for those of us who sell our time. And this will include most professionals and therapists. So, my name's Angela Turton. I am a chartered accountant. I qualified in 1992, so nearly 30 years as an accountant. I'm a licensed coach and I am a business owner. And having had a practice before, I have been a business owner for a number of years, as well as what I'm doing now within Action Coach. So, the issue for all of us that are selling our time is that our time is limited. We have 24 hours in the day. We have 7 days in the week and 52 weeks in the year. And it is the same for all of us, which means there is always going to be a ceiling on the amount you can earn if you are selling time by the hour. So if we look at a few scenarios here, just a few examples, you might recognize these for yourself or not. And this is a little exercise for you to do yourself at home afterwards. And it's taking what your working day looks like. How many hours do you have in your working day? And so many of us are at the moment, our working hours have been shortened by being at home, being home working, have the kids at home so that you're schooling the kids. And quite a lot of us at the moment are struggling with getting chargeable hours in our working day. So work out what your chargeable hours are for the day and then work out your rate, and that will give you the amount that you can earn in a day. Times that by 48 weeks, and you get times that by 5 days a week, and then times that by 48 weeks in a year, and you get the annual amount that you can earn. But this does suggest and imply that you are going to be working those number of hours for the whole 48 weeks, which is probably unlikely. And the figures will vary very widely, which and will obviously depend on your available hours and the rate that you charge. But I mean, they can be quite large if you are going to be charging out 10 hours um, a week, sorry, 10 hours a day, and you're going to be doing that 48 weeks in the year, 5 days a week, then you could earn, £1 million plus. But that's not going to be many of us, and it's certainly not going to be many of us on this call. So let's look at a few elements of this. Let's look about price. We have been talking about price since we first crawled out of the caves. First, we were bartering, then fixed coinage came in, we was using that instead. Haggling used to be commonplace, and we don't tend to do so much of that in the UK, except it seems when it comes to paying for services. And then it is called negotiation. So there's a few things that we'll be looking at about setting the price. The value we place on an object that determines its price, not the intrinsic value of the thing itself. The only right price is the one the customer is prepared to pay. With the absence of standard prices, people will pay what they perceive is the value of the goods or services they are getting. So the first thing to think about is, what do they think they are getting? Your customers, your clients. Are they getting a Rolls Royce or are they getting a Mini? The second thing to think about is your own confidence. Because when you quote your price, you have to have total confidence in that price and your worth for that price, or your client will pick up the question in your voice and will start to question your ability to do the job, however unfair that is. And then there's the signals around quality. If McKinsey started offering consultancy for £50 an hour, or Rolls-Royce started offering the Phantom for only 10 grand, you wouldn't think, oh, bargain. You'd think, hang on a minute, what is wrong with that? So you need to be careful about what you are setting out your stall with regards to the quality. If you are underpricing yourself, what you are saying is that my quality may not be the best or may not be the same as somebody who's charging slightly more, even though you know that your quality is very, very high. And the last thing to think about is commitment. Your clients and customers will often value something the more they pay for it. So if you need their buy-in, if you need their commitment, they may respond better to a higher price as they don't want to waste their investment. How often have we had a free consultation and the customer, the client, has not turned up because it's free? They haven't wanted, they just forgot about it. Whereas if you charged for that commitment, for that first initial consultation, and you got a commitment from them, even if you later refunded it, they may well be more likely to turn up. And if you need to work with them on something, the higher they've paid for it, the less likely they are to say, I'm, I can't waste, sorry, the more likely they are to say, I can't waste that amount of money. So I need to do my bit because otherwise I've wasted that amount. So think about that commitment that you're asking from your client. And just be aware that if you are selling by the price per an hour, and I'm sure we've all had this, you will need to justify your rates, you will need to justify the time. Quite often I've heard and I've had, God, how can you charge that much when all you've had to do is fill in a form? Now you and I all know that actually there's a lot more to it than just filling in a form. But your client doesn't. So think about how you are going to explain what they are getting. This comes back to, what do they think they are buying? Are they buying just you filling in a form? Are they buying the wealth of knowledge and commitment to excellence that you have put behind that? And quite often, if you're billing for time, you'll need to bill after the event. Because if you're billing for time, you don't know how long it's going to take until you have done the job. So you may not be able to be in a position to bill upfront. So there are two pricing models that we can look at. There's our cost-based pricing and the value-based pricing. And we're going to go through these quickly now. So the cost-based pricing is often harder to see when we're selling time, because at the beginning of your business, you may be cash poor and time rich. So you are willing to work for a lower rate to get the cash in. Please be careful if you're doing this that you don't lose out on any opportunities that might come along. So this is a little exercise that you can do at home again to work out your minimum charge out rate. Now, this is the absolute minimum that you need to survive in business. Any lower than this, and you will not get what you want fiscally in terms of money from your business. So what money do you need? Now, I've just used these because they're very easy to use and to work with when you're talking about years and months. So we put your own figures into this. How much do you actually need to live? What are the actual costs of running the business? That'll be more if you have an office or a premises or a room somewhere, or if you've got staff that help you. What are their costs? And then what do you require to live well? So by this, I mean, you need a basic level that pays for the mortgage and the food and the kids' school uniforms and things like that. But in order to live well, you might want to be going on holiday when we're allowed again. You might want to be going out when we're allowed again. You might want to have that pedicure once a month. You might want to do lots of little things. You might want to go and visit friends and families, take them out for dinner, all of these things that we're obviously not allowed to do now. Or it might be just, subscriptions to magazines or things on the telly, Netflix, all those sort of things. What extra do you need to live well? Your definition of living well, nobody else's. What do you want to give in terms of either charity donations or maybe giving to your children to help them get on the ladder or whatever it is? And then what do you want to save? And you may have your own categories. So add those all up. What do you need to earn from work? And then you look at your time that you've got available to charge. Now, if a working day is 8 hours for you and you're going to spend 2 hours working on the business, you will only have 6 hours to be charged. At 5 hours worked a week, that gives you an annual of 1,560 hours to charge a year. Take off the holidays, take off the sick, that gives you your total chargeable hours in the year. And then you just divide one by the other to get your minimum charge out rate. Now, I do stress this is a minimum because this is going to be the cost. This is the cost of you working. You then will have to look at other things in order to say whether or not that is what you're going to be charging, because you're going to be putting on a profit element or whatever. You might want to look at the quality signals that we talked about before, or you might want to be in the same ballpark as everybody else. If everybody else in your industry is charging £70 an hour, you don't want to be charging 35. But at least this will give you that I don't want to go below that. What this also will do is when we review our profit later, we can come back to this figure because we know that this is the cost of our time. So the other way of valuing your time or valuing your prices, putting your prices in place, is to look at your value. What are you, and it's value-based costing of pricing rather, is looking at what is the value that you are selling. So this is what is it worth to the customer. This is the intrinsic value versus the subjective value, and you won't know that maybe. So let's have a little look at it. So when you are looking at what value you are going to be giving, it may not be obvious the full value. It's because it will include the direct outcomes of working with you. And we'll come on to a few examples in a minute, but also the indirect consequences of working with you, but also think about if they don't work with you. So if you're running an accountancy practice and you have somebody who, if they don't work with you, will go to jail or will get fines, this is the cost of not working with you because they won't get their accounts in on time. Andy Bounds, who is one of the UK's best gurus on sales, calls this the afters. What are you left with? What is your client left with when you have finished working with you? Start thinking in terms of that. So there are two exercises to try, both of which I've got from people who are much better at sales than I am. The first, as just talked about, is Andy Bounds. And Andy Bounds talks about people becoming an afters causing thing. So this is the exercise. You write down, I help who, to all of those things that you help them to get to when you leave the room, and then the by, and these are the deliverables. So which people do you help? Who are you addressing? Is it business owners? Is it people in pain? Is it females who run their own business? Is it people who sell their time? Who are you after? Who are you wanting to talk to? And the second exercise is from Catherine Watkins business from the heart. And what she wants you to do is get in touch with your value, because what she wants to do is for you to really feel your value. So you list all of the direct outcomes of working with you. Just make a right list of them. All the other transformations that your client might have along the way. And then list the costs if they don't go ahead. What will that be? What is going to happen to them if they don't work with you? And then ask yourselves, what would the client pay for all these goodies? And as Andy says, the client will get this huge amount of value from what you're doing with them, and your price will be this. So let's look at a few examples. If we were working with a business who are having a profit of 300,000 and working with us for maybe 6 months, they could get that profit up to 500,000. The value that they get from this profit from working with us is going to be £200,000. But my price, what I'm going to charge them, is 10,000. So they have got a huge return on their investment, £190,000 return on investment. So their value is quite high. For those therapists out there, what if your client is in pain of any sort and this is stopping them working? If it's stopping them working, then there is a lost earnings, especially if they're self-employed. Perhaps in a week, they can't work for 10 hours a week. So maybe it takes them 2 hours to get themselves out of bed, get themselves sorted, get themselves ready before they're able to start work. So if they are earning £50 an hour, the cost of their pain per week is £500. If you can sort their pain in 6 treatments at £35, because that's what we pulled out from before, then that cost is only 210. So the value that the people are getting from your service just in lost earnings is 290. But how much would they pay not to be in pain? And I'm sure it's a lot more than that. And then we think about what is the costs of them not working with you. Well, in the case of a coach such as myself, it may be that actually the business will decline because they're not addressing all their problems. And maybe instead of gaining the 200,000 in their profit, they're actually going to lose that because their systems aren't right, and they're going to end up in a pickle with their team and customers. And maybe for your person that's in pain, for the client that's suffering, there's all sorts of depression will set in. Their relationships will suffer if they don't work for you. So when you have done these exercises of getting all of this stuff down on paper, you will start to realize what the true value of your work is. So looking at risk and reward, we're all quite familiar with this balancing act, that the more you risk, the bigger your rewards are likely to be. And it's the same in our pricing. If we are pricing on a hours-based pricing, then our client will take most of the risk. You are going to be, it's a low risk for you because you know that you're going to get your money from the client, whatever. But you are potentially missing out on any rewards. So it's low risk, but also low rewards. If you are doing a value-based pricing, then you take the risk because you are saying that actually I am going to deliver X for this amount of money. If it takes longer than you thought, then you have lost out. But your client doesn't have a risk because they are, they've bought what they bought, they're going to get what they're going to get, and they've got what they paid for. So think about that and think about how, when you are designing your prices, you can get to a win-win situation so that both you and the client are happy with what you do. And it may be that actually you're talking about value pricing, but you're managing how you deliver that project so that it is a win-win situation. So let's look a little bit about profit, because the effect of getting the balance right between cost and value goes straight on the bottom line. Our time is invisible, but it is also measurable. It is a finite resource and therefore it is valuable. So you need to be measuring what you are doing with your time. If you don't measure the amount of time you spend on a client, how will you know that you have been rewarded properly for the time that you have spent? We have all, those of us who've worked with clients, know that we have those lovely clients that pay on time, that don't spend overtime talking about things that are not pertinent to the project, or that go down rabbit holes, or that just cause a lot of stress by ringing you every 2 minutes for an update, or every 2 minutes with different questions. And we've got those time wasters who do the reverse, who are on the phone every 2 seconds, or who are changing their minds every minute, and we know what those look like. So if you control what you're charging, then it doesn't matter if your client is going to be paying for you for that time that they are wasting. Then then that may be a win-win situation. So think about very carefully how, when you set up your prices, how you are going to manage that. And if, like a lot of solicitors do, you are dividing your time into 6-minute chunks, that you know that is fine, because if the client rings you up 3 times a day, they're going to be billed for those time. But you might be saying, actually, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to charge you this amount of money for your conveyancing, and I will manage both the client, the team, and the time to make sure that we don't go over budget. Because the consequences of going over budget is that you will have, on time, is that you will have an amount that you cannot recover. Very, very simply, if you have spent more time than you budgeted for, and you cannot reclaim that time, then you will lose the difference. Now, the problem with this is that time, as I say, is invisible. So you may not see that instantly. But if you are putting your work in progress onto a system, either as a separate work in progress calculation, or through your accounting system somehow, then that will come onto your bottom line. If you are not recording your costs of your work, of your time, then you will have slightly more problems seeing how this is affecting you, because you won't see it through your accounting system. If you can manage to work out where you are having unrecoverable time, then you will be able to control it. So if, for example, you spent all day doing a job that you can only charge out for maybe 100 £140 or something, then you've actually lost quite a bit of time, because you've only, if you take that 8 hours and divide it by 140, oops, I don't know what I've done there. If you end up with not your charge out rate, you end up with £17 per hour, not the 35. So you're not recovering what you want to do. So think about where you are losing time. Where is it slipping through your fingers? So that's the first point on profit. The second point on profit is that a change in rate will have a significant effect on your bottom line. If nothing else changes, so if your costs aren't going up and the time you're spending isn't going up, just changing your rate per hour will have an effect. Now, I'm not suggesting you jump from £50 to £100 in one go, but the effect of jumping from £50 to £100 is £96,000 over the whole year, all other things being equal. So it may be that you should consider putting your prices up once a year, or every time you get a new client, slightly putting them up by £5 an hour or something. Or it may be that you need to have that written into your contract. But you certainly need to be reviewing your rate per hour every quarter or so, because if you can put them up, the value on your profit, well, is quite immense. So have a look at that. So finally, most people do overestimate what they can do in a day, and they underestimate what they can do in a year. But if you are selling time, you really, really need to be aware of what your time is being spent on and what you are doing with it, so that you can charge appropriately and you can be rewarded for all of the time you spent in education, in training, in your CPD. So think very carefully about your prices. Next steps for everybody. I would love to have a virtual coffee. I'm big on coffee. We can't meet face to face, otherwise I'd suggest coffee and cake somewhere. But please, get in touch. We can have a quick chat about your problems and then we can catch up with the rest of the world. This is Angela Turton from Action Coach, hoping to see you with coffee soon.